This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
Have you ever felt your life in danger from the higher powers and the people who control the world?
Pathetic. I'm going to be frightened of them. Are you having a laugh? No way. If you're taken out, you're taken out. But you're taken out trying to do the right thing.
David Icke, for a period of time, was Britain's most ridiculed man. He was a laughingstock.
Do you still think the royal family were shape-shifting lizards?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yes.
But as time has gone past, he seems to have grown more and more support, more and more people that believe the things he says. Icke, these days, does these global speaking tours to thousands and thousands of people. He sells tons and tons of books, he makes documentaries, and appears on pretty big podcasts. He's basically our British knockoff version of Alex Jones.
8 billion! Wake up! It's you have always controlled the many. Enough! No more!
So, today we will explore the controversial rise of David Icke.
What's the psychological warfare point here, and what do you see happening in these phases?
Well, I think, first of all, Alex, is as you pointed out, you know, if you're prepared to do the research and you're prepared to focus your life on this stuff over the years, you don't have to be a prophet.
David Icke. Well, now, let me get this story right. The press claim that you claim to be the Son of God. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Yes, you see, the thing is that it's quite funny, really. I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
Fine.
In 1991, David Icke, wearing a turquoise blue tracksuit, appeared on television claiming he was the Son of God.
I grew up on a council estate in Leicester where people didn't expect much more than go and work in a factory if they could get a job, because there were factories in those days. I never accepted that. I wanted to be a footballer. People said, oh, you never be a footballer. How many people are footballers? I said, I'm going to be a footballer.
I played a whole year of league football with rheumatoid arthritis. That's a whole story in itself. I was in agony, and I played the season out, and eventually it got so bad that I couldn't carry on.
The loss of David Icke's position at Hereford was devastating. It meant that him and his wife had to sell their house, and David Icke needed to find a solution.
So I became a journalist, and long story short, I eventually became a television presenter. And when you look at my life, as I was saying, all the different elements of it, I didn't know at the time, but they were all giving me very, very important understandings that would be useful later on.
But you see, David Icke at this point was just like any other clean-cut TV presenter, impartially reporting on the news, yes ma'am, thank you ma'am, I'll take my paycheck and go home like a good little sheep. But then something happened.
It had started as a peaceful mass protest against the poll tax, but then it turned ugly. Police accused a minority of around 3,000 troublemakers of mounting a ferocious and sustained attack on them.
In 1989, Margaret Thatcher implemented the poll tax. It was very unpopular. It caused the country to go into riots, and many individuals refused to pay the poll tax, and in amongst those individuals was David Icke. Why had all of a sudden clean-cut David Icke, part of the British establishment, the BBC, why had he suddenly become so political? It seems that David Icke's political backstory would really start all the way back in 1973. In David Icke's quest to try and fix his arthritis, he would be introduced to alternative medicine, and he would dabble in the world of Chinese acupuncture. This would be David Icke's entry into the world of spirituality.
The true self, the true I, the infinite I, that which leaves the body and attains its consciousness, indeed expands its consciousness. We are simply awareness, a state of being aware.
Icke starts to dabble with alternative medicine, New Age philosophy, and next thing you know, he's the top spokesman for the Green Party.
It's David Icke from the Green Party, which has a commitment to have a Secretary of State for Animal Welfare in a Green cabinet.
In 1989, David Icke wrote a book called It Doesn't Have to Be Like This, Green Policies Explained. This book is pre-Lizard Icke. You're not going to see any reference to the Illuminati conspiracy. However, we get a glimpse at the beginning of David Icke's foray into politics. So let's read a couple of the quotes from this book to get you an idea of where his mind was at. He quotes Gandhi, "The earth has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Today, capitalism, communism, and those in between blame each other while they're all head for the same abyss. The environmental results of unbridled market forces can be seen throughout the West and the poor countries those forces exploit." He even quotes John Maynard Keynes. "Capitalism is the extraordinary belief that the nastiest of men, for the nastiest of motives, will somehow work together for the benefit of all." It's safe to say that in 1989, David Icke was what you could just consider a standard lefty, like a social democrat, not convinced by the radicals of communism, but very much against unbridled capitalism and greed. But you see, whilst he was writing this book, something was happening behind the scenes in David Icke's personal life. Before we go any further with this video, I want to give a massive shout out to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the ultimate platform for building your own amazing, beautiful looking website, and they have a load of new tools, including Squarespace Blueprint AI and SEO tools. The AI can help you create a completely custom website to exactly what it is you do. And the optimized SEO tools can help you rank higher in search results. Their flexible payments means that you can pay with things like Apple Pay and PayPal. And in some countries, you can even do buy now, pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. And the most exciting thing to me is Squarespace's AI tools, where you could type in a prompt like a product description, and you can even select how long or short you want it to be, and it will give you some really good template. And you can obviously change it and make it better yourself. Honestly, it's an amazing tool. So be sure to head over to squarespace.com/Jimmy the Giant, and to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain, use the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video.
I was having strange experiences over the period of a year when I was in a room alone.
I wasn't alone. To the point where in early 1990, I was working for the BBC, and I was staying at a hotel called the Kensington Hilton.
I came back to the room and I sat on the side of the bed.
There was such a sense of a presence there.
And I actually said into the room,
if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you'll drive me up the wall. Few days later, I go into this newsagent shop, and all I heard, it wasn't a voice, it was a very strong thought form. It said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." I start walking across to the books in a daze,
in total bewilderment.
So I'm thinking, what am I going over here for? But right in the middle of these books was this one called Mind to Mind by a woman called Betty Shine.
And I saw the word psychic.
I wanted to go and see if she would
pick up what the hell was going on around me.
In 1989, David Icke is, objectively speaking, having a psychotic breakdown. And so what does Icke do to, fix this? Well, he decides to go to a psychic who felt like it would be a good idea to tell this struggling man.
I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world.
So whilst medical professionals would probably diagnose David Icke as having a psychotic episode, podcaster James English would describe it as
like awakening, a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, it was. And
after Icke realizes he's the son of God, he goes and writes a book called Truth Vibrations. This book, to be honest, is just typical New Age sort of philosophy.
Evil's not the right word, it is imbalance. Is the force of love in control of this world, guiding this planet at this time? Of course not. The negativity, the thoughts that I'm talking about that are very destructive, are pouring out of this planet.
Icke's appearance on Wogan was seen by 17 million people. Despite trying to later slightly walk back his comments about being the son of God, the damage was done. Overnight, he literally became the laughing stock of the country. He was the punchline of every joke. And when he talks about this period of time, this ridicule, he describes it as a very dark time. But you see, whilst this was all happening, David Icke's spiritual awakening / psychotic episode had yet to bleed into his politics.
Do you claim to be the son of God? Because Terry Wogan said to you on the Wogan show, you claim to be the son of God, and you said yes.
Well, I am, yes, I'm saying that. But what I'm saying is we're all the children of God. But some people come to earth, Jesus was one, there were many more before him, who are actually part of the soul of the Godhead.
Whilst the media were having a field day on David Icke, the Green Party boss Sarah Parkin decided to quit. She didn't consider the whole I'm God stuff to be very politically viable. And also the fact that David Icke mentioned that God had instructed him to cheat on his wife with a disciple, the Green Party was starting to turn on him. And we'd also see when David Icke talks about his meeting with the psychic, she told him that politics, it's not for him. He's too spiritual. Politics is anti-spiritual, and it will make him very unhappy. He will leave politics. He doesn't have to do anything. It will happen gradually over a year. And in March 1991, Icke would resign from the Green Party. And then in the space of like 3 or 4 years, he goes on a fucking mad one writing books. He drops like 5 books, all just spiritual jargon. But then he would write a book in 1994 called The Robots' Rebellion.
I also want to talk about the manipulation that's going on in the world as well. A manipulation that wants to keep from us this spiritual knowledge and also wants to turn us into little more than robots.
In this book, for the first time, the term Illuminati is used 56 times. But hang on a second, where did this all come from? Why is he talking about the Illuminati? Well, he says that in the 1800s, some documents surfaced called
Protocols of the Elders of Zion. These protocols that came to light in the 1800s tell the story of the manipulation of the 20th century, the very manipulation that is being documented all over the world today.
The Protocols of the Wise Men of Zion was, I'm just going to get it out the way early, it was part of the propaganda that was used in the Nazi time to do bad stuff. These documents that came around about 1903, they claim to be minutes taken from a secret meeting of Jews planning to take over the world. However, in as early as 1921, these documents have been proven to be completely fake. They were a forgery. They were plagiarizing a satirical French pamphlet written in 1865 about Napoleon III. Even Hitler and Goebbels both said that they think this document is probably a forgery, but nonetheless, David Icke suggests, in the exact same way that Hitler and Goebbels did, that these documents contain an inner truth.
I actually renamed the protocols the Illuminati protocols to get away from the fact that they're blamed on the Jewish people. And if we are not adult enough to divorce the two issues of what the protocols contain and who has been quite wrongly blamed for them, then we are going to be a manipulator's dream.
When he talks about the protocols, he does something very deceptive here, and he even says it. To overcome the misleading reference to Zion, I will refer to them as the Illuminati protocols. So, not Zion protocols. He also then claims that, yes, there are Jews involved, but so are many other races. And he also says that, in fact, the Jews have suffered the most because of the Illuminati, the Brotherhood. To me, this is just insane mental gymnastics. In one paragraph, he manages to identify that the documents he's about to quote are fakes, but it must be a double bluff. The Illuminati must have leaked these documents to throw the scent off their trail. Aha! So he goes on to present this document, the same document that was used to justify the Holocaust, as a legitimate piece of wisdom because they contain an inner truth.
He outlined the game plan of the 20th century in the most extraordinary way in documents that were written before the 20th century had even begun.
One of the biggest criticisms that David Icke gets is that he is anti-Semitic, a claim that he vehemently denies.
They'll go to a venue and they'll say, this man Icke, he's going to come and say it's all the Jews, he's anti-Semitic, he's a racist, he's going to say the Jews are doing this, the Jews are doing that. I ain't said any of that. I am presenting what you could easily call the ultimate non-racist view of life, because I say race is a nonsense and an irrelevance and an illusion. Same with all of it, religion.
This is why racism and self-identity with labels of race and religion, etc., is so ridiculous. It divides and rules us. They are just experiences.
He will always kind of caveat that although he believes there is a cabal of Jews, and not always Jews, but often Jews, that control the world, they don't represent all Jews. Although later he would make claims that he doesn't agree with the amount of people who died in the Holocaust, which in his book he references David Stein, who is a man that denies that Auschwitz ever was an extermination camp.
I have to say, from my own point of view, that the evidence saying that there were no gas chambers is a lot stronger than any of the evidence that can be presented saying there were.
In his documentary called Revelations of a Mother Goddess, he retells a story that has been debunked to death, that Nathan Rothschilds profited from the Battle of Waterloo by deliberately lying to crash the British stock market. And then, in his book, The Truth Shall Set You Free, he starts saying stuff like this. Many Jewish people have also been programmed to see themselves as God's chosen people, above all the rest. And when you read some of the Jewish literature and laws, they are incredibly racist, quite stunningly so. Okay. Some research I have seen claims that of 388 members of the Russian revolutionary government in 1918, only 16 were Russian at birth. All but 2 of the rest were Jews from elsewhere. This claim, which is one that also Putin likes to make, this has been debunked in different ways. There are many layers to the Russian revolutionary government at the time, so some sections had more and less Jews than others, nowhere near the amount that he says. In 1917 to 1922, Jews were 12%, 6 out of the 50 people. And then he goes on to say this: when they openly reject the inherited view of racial superiority, those patterns will disperse from their magnetic cape/aura, and they will cease to attract racism to them. Which, look, I don't know, man, but to me, that kind of sounds like you're blaming the Jews for the Holocaust.
Apparently, I read in one newspaper, I am anti-Semitic. I wouldn't know how to be racist if I took a correspondence course. The whole idea is ludicrous that we can judge anyone by their physical body, for all the reasons I've talked about tonight.
David Icke is very slippery around this subject, and it's kind of annoying. I've noticed from reading more Icke than any man should, that he seems to very rarely talk about the ruling elite class who control the world, who are not Jewish, which is the majority of them. He speaks very little about the Koch brothers or Rupert Murdoch, but seems to speak a lot about
George Soros, real name Georgie Swartz.
Rockefeller's another one of these bloodline families, along with the Rothschilds and others.
In his book, The Truth Shall Set You Free, he mentions Rothschilds at least 144 times. But, you know, just weird coincidence. The Koch brothers, who famously have lobbied many policies that have been very negative on many people's lives, he mentions them 0 times. In fact, I actually haven't found him ever speak about them in any of his books that I have looked into. However, in The Truth Shall Set You Free, he does mention Rupert Murdoch 10 times. But it's basically always in connection to the Rothschilds. When he speaks about Murdoch, you know, a man who controls a ton of media and pushes his agenda through that media, Icke references the Spotlight newspaper, owned by Liberty Lobby, which was owned by William Carto. William Carto is directly connected to the Ku Klux Klan. He denies the Holocaust, and he says that Hitler's defeat was the defeat of Europe and America. Icke uses this newspaper, the Spotlight, as a reference at least 17 times in The Truth Shall Set You Free. And specifically, he references an article linking the rise of Rupert Murdoch to names such as Harry Oppenheimer, Armand Hammer, the Bronfman family, and the Rothschilds. All of these names just so happen to all be Jewish.
We need to put down these irrelevant manufactured fault lines of race and religion and culture and colour.
And I tried to look into a connection between these individuals. The only one that I could find any connection of was between Murdoch and Rothschilds. What was that connection, you might wonder? Well, it's that Jacob Rothschilds and Mr. Murdoch separately purchased some equity in Genie Oil and Gas Inc. that comes to a whopping ownership between them of 5.5% of the company.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if it's that suspicious that 2 ultra wealthy people own a small percentage in oil and gas. I'm not sure that that's like a big smoking gun. But this is where, to me, it gets really concerning, because Icke goes on, he continues. It's not the front men we need to look at so much as who is behind them pulling their strings. In other words, it's not the provable fact that a multi-billionaire Rupert Murdoch owns many newspapers and pushes his political agenda through those, but instead you should worry about a speculative theory of a mysterious group of Jewish elites who an anti-Semitic paper falsely claimed that are connected to Rupert Murdoch and they control him. Those people are who you should worry about, not Mr. Murdoch himself.
A secret organisation was created in London called the Round Table, and it was created by the Rothschild family, not least through a guy called Lord Lionel Walter Rothschild. The first head of this Round Table secret group was Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was a Rothschild frontman and gopher who plundered the diamond and gold mining of South Africa, Southern Africa, for the Rothschilds.
Look, I'm not in David Icke's brain. I can't tell you if he has some real deep hatred for Jews or something. I can't tell you that. I don't know. But what I can tell you is he takes an overwhelming amount of false information from people who do hate Jews. And then he takes these theories and presents it to a very impressionable audience and presents them as facts. David Icke might not be consciously anti-Semitic, but he is clearly unconsciously anti-Semitic, which to me arguably is scarier.
The music industry batch of people I'm talking about, they're the ones who get to benefit from it. That's what this is all about. It's systemic racism from their side. What do you think? The system and that man and a community of Jewish lawyers and thingy have made me feel that way.
Anti-Semitism is socialism for fools. What do you mean by that? Well, you see, look, if you said this phrase, ultra-wealthy capitalists manipulate politicians to make decisions that profit them, but also make the lives of ordinary people worse, whilst amassing enormous control of the planet, you would say, fucking hell, mate, chill out, that sounds a bit Marxist to me. However, if you did some magic, right, and you took the word ultra-wealthy capitalists and replaced it with Jews, now we're talking, baby. And I think this is important to look at because within David Icke's confusing brain lies an ideological dilemma. And we can see this when he is asked about capitalism.
Most of the globe is under a capitalist system.
No, it's not. It's under a cartellist system. They are cult companies. They were created with cult money, which was limitless. And so what happens is they are built up to become monopolists. And in their developmental period, they are allowed to lose loads of money. Look at Amazon, for goodness sake, loads of money year after year, phenomenal amounts of money, because they're building a monopoly. And they are competing against other companies. You could call them genuinely capitalist companies that have entrepreneurs that are using their creativity. But those other companies they're competing with do have to watch the bottom line. They can't go on losing money year on year on year. And so they're under a tremendous disadvantage to these cult companies that have a limitless cash flow.
In order for Icke to explain that when ultra-wealthy people gain lots of money, they gain lots of power, they're able to influence the world, and often there's negative outcomes, Icke has to create a new term which he calls cartellism. It's like a cognitive dissonance, right? And I believe it has to do with his new age hippie spiritual beliefs, which kind of has a very simplistic definition of freedom. In his mind, when you look at the history of Nazi Germany, communists, all the way up until the modern day, he sees the government as simply a centralized power that controls our lives. Now, capitalism, that is up Icke's street, because David Icke has a very simplistic binary view that government equals slavery, therefore capitalism must equal freedom. Yeah. Fuck, bro, he's so free. Ain't no one gonna tell capitalism what to do. You know. But oh no, this is a big problem because it creates an issue. What about when the free choices of ultra-wealthy individuals lead to them profiting off of tragedies, treating people unfairly, lobbying the government to do bad things, lying to the public? In David Icke's mind, humans naturally can't be that evil, surely.
Why would anyone but a psychopath create a financial system which lends people money that doesn't exist called credit, and if they can't pay it back, it takes away their home and throws them in the street? Only psychopaths could do that.
It can't be capitalism, man. He's so cool. No, it must be something deeper.
I've been chasing all over the countryside. I've been as far as Dulce, New Mexico, and all this, looking for these reptilian people. I haven't found any.
And?
Well, that's why I'm coming to you. You're the noted expert, and everybody's geared me and focused me towards you. And they tell me you got the answers here.
Well, who's got all the answers? None of us, really, but we've all got some of the answers.
All right, lads, I know this is the moment you've been waiting for. The lizard people. let's get fucking stuck in. Often, when I unfortunately had to listen to a lot of David Icke, I've noticed he has this pattern of doing this thing where he says sort of like 80%, maybe 90% of speculative theory mixed in with maybe 20% of very tenuous links to science, history, and like actual facts.
And the senses pick up vibrational information, they turn it into electrical information fed to the brain, and the brain then constructs reality based on that information. It's about the manipulation of the conscious mind world that we see. It's about the police state emerging. It's about vaccinating children, destroying their immune system. It's about the microchip agenda, and all this stuff goes on.
He does all of this whilst mixing in some basic truisms, also known as Barnum statements. These are statements that sound specific, but they really describe any and all of humanity at any point in history. This is the thing that most psychics play off, and it's the thing that David Icke plays off.
It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. It takes nothing to join the crowd. It takes everything to stand alone. Standing alone also in a world of clinical insanity.
He explains that in religion and mythological texts, they often have some kind of dark entity, and that dark entity can sometimes be described or drawn as like lizards or snakes, dragons, demons.
Massive reptile figure, dragon figure in the center of the road. Now, we're getting into what the biggest secret is here, because when you go around London, and indeed looking at the coats of arms of the aristocratic families, etc., again and again you keep seeing reptiles, you keep seeing dragons.
Why? Because the human brain biologically is hardwired to be scared of snakes. That part he doesn't mention. But that aside, what he said is true. So then what he does with this true statement is he then goes on to say,
they talk about the Nagas, the gods who, wait for it, had the ability to manifest as human or manifest as reptiles.
Oh my word, look at this. It's a half-lizard god from Hinduism called Nagas. Isn't it a strange coincidence he's a lizard considering all the other stuff I said? Ignoring the fact that that's Hinduism's whole thing. They love a half-human, half-animal god. Shut the fuck up, mate. Look, it's a fucking lizard god. Just believe me. And then after this, through a series of wild leaps in logic, he deducts
reptilian entities are behind this manipulation of human society. And people can deny their existence if they like. I do not give a shit. They exist.
And he confirms this to us because a random painter DM'd him and said,
and he's on his own and he's painting away in this landscape, and he said, then this came down. And he said it was completely closed up apart from this window, and there were two entities in the window, and what he saw at the window were these reptilian type entities just staring at him, looking at him.
Well look, you know, if that's too speculative and crazy for you, a bit too far out, then here.
This year, the Daily Mail has been taking the piss out of me over this for ages, like all the other buggers, and they run a perfectly straight story headlined, "Welcome to our new lizard overlord. Studies suggest alien worlds could be full of super intelligent dinosaurs." But because it's a scientist saying it, it must be bloody true.
Icke does something very interesting here. He uses science to confirm his theory whilst also ridiculing Daily Mail's trust in scientists. Icke does this a lot where he denies mainstream scientists, because, you know, all like 8 million whatever scientists there are on Earth are directly controlled by the Rothschilds, and he'll deny them on a whole bunch of issues if it has anything to do with COVID, climate change, or just the nature of reality. But sometimes he will use mainstream science when it works for him.
I was approached by a research team in Spain. What I've been saying about COVID and the jab since the spring of 2020 has been confirmed by their research.
This is from the mainstream media. Researchers have been able to translate brain signals into speech using sensors and could eventually lead to being able to read anyone's thoughts.
He does this in his shape-shifting lizard people theory, where he will talk about science and how we know that there are different frequencies and the eyes can only see certain frequencies. That is true.
We have a frequency range
which we can perceive. We call them the physical senses. But outside of that range are other frequencies, other dimensions of existence and life that are sharing the same space that we are.
Therefore, Obama is a lizard who eats the blood of children and is trying to control the world.
They were going to create new viruses in laboratories that were resistant to drugs, that they were going to use that to cull the population, that they were going to use vaccinations to cull the population.
So look, I've explained all that to lay out that Icke is fucking insane. Despite that, David Icke gets tons and tons of praise in comment sections. His interview on London Real, I heard about COVID, got something like 8 million views before YouTube banned it. And a lot of the praise is about how David Icke predicted everything that's happening today. And it would be COVID in particular that would really make him quite popular. So let's put our cool guy capitalism glasses on and analyze. The earliest thing I could find was in 2010 in his book, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. He said a man-made, I'm taking this off. He said that a man-made disease would be created in a lab and it would spread and cause us all to have to get vaccinated. And you hear that and you go, fucking hell, do my ears deceive? Everything you said happened. Firstly, let's put aside the fact that as the world became more and more globalized, more diseases were able to be spread because people travel more and pass them on easier, and that governing bodies ever since 1952 with GISRS, and in 1999 the WHO had documents planning for some pandemic. It was pretty obvious that a pandemic could happen at some point, and this was a thing that governments have to prepare for. But, let's ignore that. If you were to actually read what he actually said in Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, in the section Laboratory Flu, the population colours have been a driving force behind the swine flu vaccination program. An international corporate criminal syndicate is intent on carrying out a mass genocide against the people of the United States by using an artificial flu pandemic virus and a forced vaccine program to cause mass deaths and injury and depopulate America. Now, sure, Icke was right. There was a pandemic. A vaccine rollout happened. But, let's be specific here. I don't know if there was a mass culling to depopulate America. I don't know if that happened. I don't think it happened. I think a lot of Americans are left. So what is this thing about population culling? Where did he get this belief and why did this not happen? We can work it out by looking at the first layer of the David Icke conspiracy cake. In his books, he references a thing called the New Order of Barbarians, which basically was a supposed secret meeting where a guy called Dr. Richard Day met with pediatricians and for some reason decided to tell them to stop recording and taking notes of our pediatrician talk. I'm going to tell you the entire secrets of the Rockefellers and the New World Order because I'm an inside man and just trust me here. And 20 years after this supposed meeting, Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan recorded 4 one-hour tapes of him telling you this meeting and sold them.
This is tape 1 of 3 tapes on the New Order of Barbarians.
Okay, all right, maybe that one's a little bit loose, but let's try the next one. He references the mysterious Georgia Guidestones that have a cryptic message saying the population needs to stay at 500,000. These Guidestones were just an American built a knockoff Stonehenge in the 80s. Okay, maybe that's a little bit shaky, but what about this one?
Confessions of a Satanist by Freighter 616.
Which is supposedly the writing of conveniently an anonymous Satanist who decided to just explain the ins and outs of the New World Order, the Illuminati, whilst he was dying on his deathbed.
Satanism flourishes beneath the scintillating midnight blue wet streets.
This first layer of the David Icke conspiracy cake is just anonymous bullshit fan fiction. His second layer gets a bit more interesting though. This is subjective evidence. It's evidence of something, but it does require that you apply some kind of dark ulterior motive to what's being presented, i.e. Obama and Bill Gates supporting Planned Parenthood. Depending how you look at it, if you consider all abortion at any stage along to be murder, and you choose to apply a dark, sinister motive to Obama and Bill Gates, then sure, you could probably call this population control. But it's not so simple, because if you have a different opinion on abortion, this would just be seen as a political activist helping push women's reproductive rights. But then this one's a good one, because Bill Gates also is connected to vaccines. Ooh. Ooh, suspicious. The next one's a bit better. This is the United Nations Global Biodiversity Agenda 2021. This was written and launched in 1993. This states, clearly, the growth of world population and production combined with unstable consumption patterns places increasingly severe stress on the life-supporting capacities of the planet. Okay, so it does talk about overpopulation, but it doesn't propose a solution. But David Icke gets around that because he tells us that there was a draft version of this document that actually suggests we need to reduce the world's population to 1 billion, although he never provides this draft version. And why would David Icke have that and not tell us? Whatever. But then this one, this is good evidence here. Let's go into this one. This is Ted Turner. Ted Turner is the media mogul of CNN, and Ted Turner publicly is outspoken about population control.
And after that, we've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
so what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff.
Controversially, he has pushed for China's one-child policy, which he claims is to limit carbon emissions. Oh, Teddy boy. This is it. This is the Illuminati. This is the controlled Zionist takeover of the planet. We got ya! But hang on a second here. Ted Turner called Israel terrorists. And if you keep reading, he seems to be pretty anti-Israel. But hang on a second, that doesn't make sense, because Israel and Zionism, that's meant to be central to the Illuminati. David Icke's whole theory is around Israel and... Oh, I know. The anti-Israel stuff is a way to get us off the scent that he's part of the Illuminati. It's a double bluff. Remember, to conspiracy theorists, any proof for or against your theory is proof for your theory. But then we get to the third layer of the cake. Now this one's serious. The third layer is what I would call real evidence. Sort of. Leaked documents from 1975 from Richard Nixon's administration shows that they were targeting developing nations to try and reduce their population. The memorandum was a way that the United States government could use human population control to limit the political power of undeveloped nations, ensure the easy extraction of foreign natural resources, prevent young anti-establishment individuals, blah, 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 a way to protect American businesses abroad. Wait a second, that's real.
The president himself admitted he has lost his impeachment fight in the House, that he has not always given the public the straight story on Watergate, and that he withheld from his lawyers and the House committee certain damaging information.
So look, in the real world, the one that Icke doesn't inhabit, conspiracies do happen. MK really happened. The American government really tried to do mind control experiments on the public. The NSA really did spy on Americans. Governments do shady shit nationally and internationally. However, we have to question, why do we know this as a fact and not a conspiracy theory? Because eventually the truth came out and there's hard factual evidence that proves it happened. Skepticism of the government is very important. It's why we have opposition parties, it's why we have journalists. But my problem with David Icke and people like him is that it's weaponizing skepticism, sowing distrust in not only the establishment but just each other. It makes people skeptical of people around them, institutions, schools, lawyers, etc. He takes real examples of awful things like the Nixon memorandum, but he uses them deceptively. Like, if we go back to the original claim that Icke made,
They were going to create new viruses in laboratories that were resistant to drugs, that they were going to use that to cull the population.
That was that a pandemic would cause a vaccine rollout that would be used to cull the American population. The Nixon memorandum doesn't make any mention to the American population or any attempts to reduce it. It was simply an evil foreign policy that Nixon used to ensure American dominance. When we look at David Icke's prediction over COVID, the only thing he got correct was that there would be a pandemic, which some have speculated there is a chance it came from a lab, but most are skeptical of that claim. And he correctly predicted there'd be a mass vaccine rollout. Those are the only facts that he got correct. But these were never secrets. These were in public documents that a pandemic was very likely to happen and a vaccine rollout would have to happen to try and defend against it. This has been public knowledge for many years. But what he does is deceptively link lots of things together, very flimsy evidence with heavy speculation, creating an elaborate story to support his claim. And this style of fucking bullshit has a name, and it is called Ramsey's theory.
If you line up the entire text of Moby Dick
which was published in 1851, into a giant rectangle, you may notice some peculiar patterns, like these words, which seem to predict the assassination of Martin Luther King, or these references to the 1997 death of Princess Di. So, was Herman Melville a secret prophet? The answer is no, and we know that thanks to a mathematical principle called Ramsey theory.
Most things that can be explained as weird coincidences and connections can be explained by Ramsey's theory. It's a mathematical theory that says that just from the sheer amount of things that happen in life, you can kind of link any single thing to another thing very easily. Look, I'm going to give you an example, right? I'm going to present my conspiracy theory, right? And that is of ancient cat bloodlines that control the world. Have you ever wondered why the modern world is so obsessed with cats? Look around you, Elon Musk, he loves cats. Look at the logo for Tesla. Does it not look like the nose of a cat? It's really quite simple. If we take a look back at ancient Egypt, the hieroglyphs show that the connection between the divine felines suggests that cats are gods. I read a newspaper where some people speculated that the cats actually helped with the creation of the pyramids. Jump forward to medieval times where there was a rise in anti-cat rhetoric and cats fell out of favor. They were connected with the occult, the witchcraft, Satanists. They disappeared. Cats were killed, people stopped having them. And then as punishment for these evil actions of the humans who were just trying to protect themselves from the cat conspiracy, the cats unleashed the bubonic plague. Cats beforehand were often seen as protectors of plague because they could kill the rats and the fleas that would carry the disease, but without the cats there, a pandemic would more easily spread. This had gone on for some time. Anti-catism was really quite popular, but that was until a British monarch, Queen Victoria. Famously a historic bloodline with connections to ancient cat worship, Queen Victoria brought back cats. Cats became popular. Now, take your phone, scroll through Instagram. Tell me, how long is it until you see a cat video? A cute, innocent cat video. The shape-shifting cat elite controls your mind. They laughed at me when I said this. They would laugh at me. Oh, cat shape-shifting animals. Yeah, right. But isn't it strange that when a scientist says it? Here, look, a study linking unique cat parasites to mind control. Yes, thank you. Buy my book. Yeah, I was just editing the bit about Egyptian cat gods. I walk in, go buy ramen, and lo and behold, there's a fucking cat god, a sphinx, on the table.
Where did they come from?
Are you fucking kidding me? Is that... There you go. It's just a normal coincidence that happens, but the way David Icke's brain works means that he would see something deeper in that. Look, you can do this forever. Like, once you have decided what your conclusion to your theory is, you can find evidence to support it, as long as you claim that any evidence that disproves your theory actually comes from a corrupt cat-worshipping establishment. What Icke does, and he does it well, is he speaks in universal truths.
We keep each other in line by ridicule and condemnation for the crime of being different.
So they can be centrally controlled by a handful of faceless bureaucrats.
We don't want war, but we have them. One after the other, because the crazies want them.
Politicians sometimes lie, the ultra-wealthy can be corrupt, and bad things happen in life. And then he constructs this elaborate, shaky Jenga tower of sketchy evidence and heavy speculation, and then he presents it and makes it look like something. But in reality, it's just Homer Simpson stood there with all the fat hidden away behind his back tied together. But with his great ability to speak and convince people, he's able to put these ideas out, go on some podcaster who has done literally zero research into anything he's actually said and has zero knowledge on how to debunk any of his claims. If you squint your eyes hard enough, you can look at it and go, damn, Homer really do be in shape. My real problem with Icke is that he has some correct analysis. Remember, anti-Semitism is the socialism for fools. It is true that ultra-wealthy people manipulate the government, lobby laws that benefit themselves, and often profit off of tragedies. That is all true. But his whole theory that it's this sort of dark, shady group is just so insanely bullshit. Him and his followers seem to have this insanely high standard of evidence when it comes to anything from the mainstream establishment. But Icke and his followers never have the same standard of evidence for themselves. Whenever Icke is wrong, they'll just dismiss it and say, oh, well, you're gonna make some mistakes searching for the truth. This happened numerous times during COVID. Originally, as I laid out, he claimed that the vaccine was going to cull the population. But then somehow over time, as that messaging about overpopulation became less and less relevant, Icke changes his hypothesis without ever telling anyone and says that the COVID vaccine actually is about 5G connecting us to the AI, to the cloud, and it's got mind-controlled chips in it or something.
That they were going to use that to cull the population, that they were going to use vaccinations to cull the population.
And what I've been saying about the jab and its content is that that self-replicating nanotechnology is designed to connect us and connect the brain to artificial intelligence and the cloud.
But yet he and his followers will say that Icke was completely right the whole time. The thing in life is that the world is not binary. It isn't good or bad, corrupt or uncorrupt. There's so much grey area. COVID had a lot of misinformation, a lot of problems. People did benefit off it. People did profit from it. The billionaires doubled their income from it. But was it because of some great deep conspiracy? Or was it that human nature, greed, and sheer human incompetence can lead to bad outcomes?
Greatest fear in the world is the opinions of others, and the moment you are unafraid of the crowd, you are no longer a sheep. You become a lion, and a great roar rises from your heart. The roar of freedom, of being you and not someone else's version of you.
If you ask David Icke, if you sat him down and said, okay, Icke, what's your solution? He will say to you,
when we free our perceptions, we free our lives. And if enough of us do it, then the world becomes free into a world that instead of being a prison can become the paradise that it once was and can be again.
Cool, all right, we've done that. We're all now awake spiritually, whatever that means. Now what? Who's doing the bins? Who's going to fix the potholes? By not offering political solutions and an actual coherent pathway to improving the world, some small percentage of people that listen to his bullshit will come up with their own solutions.
Suspicious package was found inside the mailbox of a home owned by George Soros, and inside there appeared to be an explosive device.
The mass shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. 11 people died after a gunman opened fire during morning service.
We need to hold the doors of the Capitol.
Conspiracy theories offer people a simplistic answer to all of the world's problems. That the evil that they see around them isn't the result of just greed, incompetence, opportunists, and sometimes by just sheer random coincidence and luck, but it's actually planned by an evil small elite, who mostly all of them happen to be Jewish, but let's just ignore that bit. At one point in David Icke's life, he was a professional footballer. He achieved his dream, his childhood dream of being a footballer, bought himself out of a working class background, and then bang, bad luck, he got arthritis and was forced to retire. And that fucking sucks. It's sad, it's cruel. But Icke found comfort in the belief that there was a greater purpose, that there was something supernatural.
I got rheumatoid arthritis. I had to finish at the age of 21. And that was a tremendous opportunity for me to overcome massive disappointment. It's like some other force has been opening and shutting doors in the maze to take me through. And one of the things that I was told through this psychic in 1990 is, all this has been planned before you even came.
Me, myself, I'm a Christian. And mainly it's because I find comfort in the belief, the faith that there is something good, deeply good out there in the universe. And I accept that mainly that's the reason I have faith, because it guides me and makes me feel comfortable. But I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that everything is supernatural. The world is just unfair, sometimes cruel, and very random. And there are evil people out there with lots of power that do awful things for no other reason than just to fulfill their own self-interests.
Do you believe that Purdue's conduct in Kentucky has led to an excessive or unnecessary amount of opioids being located throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
I don't believe so.
However, there's no fucking lizard people, David Icke. There, I said it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, jump on the Discord. We can talk about this more. You can catch me streaming. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Why'd I say it like that?